Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever in the world you are. The European Union ambassador to Zimbabwe has just been to meet President Emmerson Mnangagwa to get assurance that the 2023 elections will be free, fair, and credible. I think it is assurance that is absolutely worthless. We will recall that the European Union had a really strong team of election observers in 2018 for Zimbabwe's 2018 elections. And their finding was very detailed, and they ruled that the elections were not to international standards. And they produced a report and came up with 23 recommendations, which, if implemented, will bring Zimbabwean elections to international standards. For the record, President Emmerson Mnangagwa has insisted the elections were free, fair, and credible. And therefore, then, he has never implemented even one meaningful reform from 2018 elections. So what we are faced here with his assurance is that the elections will be free, fair, and credible is worthless. Because if it's going to be to the same standard, ZANU-PF standards, as in 2018, and it looks like they are going to be to those standards because it's not implemented even one meaningful reform, we are back to where we started. It is disappointing here that the European Union is finding it very difficult to get ZANU-PF to take the issue of free, fair, and credible elections with the seriousness the issue demands. For the simple reason that while the EU since 2018 has reminded ZANU-PF for the need to implement reforms, it should be noted that while ZANU-PF has ignored that pressure, the opposition, for their part, have too paid no attention to those reforms. So in this particular case, ZANU-PF can confidently ignore the pressure from the European Union and everybody else to implement democratic reforms because they know that the opposition will participate in the elections regardless of how flawed and illegal the process happens to be. So the problem here is not just the European ZANU-PF. The problem here is the opposition itself. That has now become the enabling party to ZANU-PF rigging elections. This is what is so annoying about our present situation in Zimbabwe. We really cannot afford to have another rigged election. And as much as the European Union can pressure ZANU-PF to have free and fair and credible elections, as long as ZANU-PF knows that the opposition will participate, even if the process is flawed. And it is flawed. So we have a serious situation here. And I feel sorry for the European Union that it finds itself in a situation where is not getting the support that one would expect from those to who stand to benefit the most from having free, fair, and credible elections. And I think the ordinary Zimbabweans should now come out of the shadows and really play a meaningful role in this and stand up and say, no, we want free, fair, and credible elections. We want the reforms to be implemented. And more particularly, to show the opposition for what it is. The opposition has been compromised. There cannot be any shadow of doubt about that in the case of Zimbabwe. These elections, to be quite honest, if the European Union wanted to be serious, they can rule them to be not to international standard. Even now, as we speak, ZANU-PF has stubbornly refused to produce a verified voters roll. How can you have meaningful election without a verified voters roll? ZANU-PF has already denied the 3 million or so Zimbabweans in the diaspora the vote for no other reason other than to cherry pick the electorate. The party knows that most of those people in the diaspora today are either there for political reasons or for economic reasons. And they will blame ZANU-PF for their plight. And therefore, then they're not likely to vote for ZANU-PF. And what does the party do? See to it that they don't get a vote. How can you have meaningful election when 37% of the electorate are denied the vote? One particular stakeholder cherry picks who can vote and who cannot vote. The system, even as it stands right now, it's clear that the individual vote is not a secret anymore in Zimbabwe. Since 2008 to the present, ZANU-PF has increased the number of polling stations from 2,000 in 2008 to 9,000 in 2013. In 2018, the number had gone up to over 11,000. Why? Because it wanted more polling stations, and now it has also introduced a rule that says people are registered as per polling station. You can only, your name is in a particular polling station, and it's not a constituency-based voters roll. It's a polling station-based voters roll. So if you are registered in one polling station, you can only vote in that polling station and nowhere else. And of course, this enables the ZANU-PF to be able to narrow down on who voted in that polling station. And judging from the result, they can narrow down to who were the individuals who voted for the opposition. Take, for instance, for the sake of argument, pick any polling station you want. 300 people voted. The ZANU-PF official in that area can look at the list of the people who voted, and he can pick with a relative sense of accuracy who would have voted for the opposition and who would have voted for the ruling party, which you cannot do if it was a constituency-based voters roll. And President Mnangagwa himself has boasted that your vote is no longer your secret. There is an audio of him saying with the It is death that doesn't have a track record, but voters have a track record, particularly in the rural areas. This is effectively frog marching the rural voters to vote for ZANU-PF. How anyone can say that process is free, fair, and credible beggars belief. These elections can be condemned even now as we speak. The European Union came up with a really good report, 23 recommendations, which both ZANU-PF, if they differed, why didn't they comment on it? It's never implemented. We are having a repeat of the same system right now. These elections are not going to be free, fair, and credible. That is the bottom line. And that is the tragedy. And I think the European Union should start looking further than just ZANU-PF to blame for the situation in Zimbabwe. We have a problem here, and the opposition is just to blame, as much to blame as ZANU-PF itself. And I think it is high time the European Union acknowledge that and stop treating the opposition with kid gloves. If we are serious about free, fair, and credible elections in Zimbabwe, we have got to be serious at pointing those who are responsible for the present situation where we do not have free, fair, and credible elections. And that is what we must do. And I think Zimbabweans themselves must also come out and disown the opposition. The opposition does not care that elections are rigged. Let's be honest about that. The opposition had the opportunity to implement the same reforms, all 23 of what the European Union came up in their report in 2018, when they were in the GNU in 2000 to 2013. They failed to implement even one reform then because they were comfortable. They didn't care about free, fair, and credible elections as long as they had their share of the spoils of power. And they are participating in these elections knowing fully well that ZANU-PF is rigging them. But they don't care as long as they have the few gravy train seats that ZANU-PF gives away to the opposition to entice them to participate. This is the truth that we've got to acknowledge. We want free, fair, and credible elections. But we've got also to accept that we will never get them as long as we have got an opposition that is willing to participate in a flawed process as long as they get a share of the spoils of power. I appreciate the efforts that the European Union ambassador is making in getting the reforms, ZANU-PF, to hold free, fair, and credible elections. But to be quite honest, I think if the truth must be told, and it must be told, that assurance is worthless. The horse has already bolted out of the stable. Closing the stable door would not make any difference. ZANU-PF is far gone in the vote rigging to even think of making a U-turn on that. ZANU-PF is not going to implement any one of the 23 recommendations that the European Union made in 2018 with only 4 months to go before the elections. So without even one meaningful reform implemented, what hope is there that the elections will be free, fair, and credible? None. So I think the European Union, to be fair here, they're just going through the motion of asking ZANU-PF to hold free, fair, and credible elections. They already know the answer, that the elections will not be free, fair, and credible. And if they were serious, they could right now condemn the elections as a farce, because they are a farce. It is a pity that we have got the European Union fighting for free, fair, and credible elections, and the opposition, whom the ordinary person has sacrificed so much to get into power, risk life and limb to elect into power on the understanding that they will implement the democratic reforms and end the case of rigged elections, are now the ones who are cooperating with ZANU-PF, keeping the regime in power, regardless of the regime rigging the elections. We need to address the problem of rigged elections, and we need to point the finger at those responsible for it. It's no longer just ZANU-PF. The opposition are playing an important role in this. If we fail to discredit the opposition, then ZANU-PF will continue to rig elections and get credibility, political legitimacy by virtue of the opposition participating. This we cannot allow. Zimbabwe can, cannot afford the luxury of yet another rigged election. We cannot stop ZANU-PF going ahead with the flawed elections. We cannot stop the opposition participating regardless of the flaws. But what we can do is show that, number one, that the process is flawed, and number two, that we've got an opposition that has lost political credibility. With those two, I find it very difficult to see why SADC would want to endorse the election results and give ZANU-PF political legitimacy. That is the challenge we've got to face. Think about it. Thank you and good night.